This is The Party with Serene and Pearl. Get it right, Poddy.
It's the Trim Healthy Podcast, home of the breast milk latte and the greatest gals in galdom. Serene and Pearl, you really blessed me on the last show, gals. And
That's what we do. It's what Serene does.
I'm
actually.
starving.
I had no part of it.
We talked about food the whole time, and I got so hungry. And I'm
this
trying
is the
to
same day because we double potty.
double potted, and I'm trying to fix my hunger with this LaCroix, and it's not
it's
working.
not doing anything, right?
And I want to cry.
Well, you know, hey, talking about crying, do you know how many times I visited the emergency room this past week?
Oh, yeah, you had Sally Dolly Wally.
Just guess how many times I went.
Oh, you mean back and forth?
Yeah.
I'm going to give it a good 3.
5.
5 trips?
5 trips.
To the ER?
First one was not anything related to my children being sick. The first one was an actual true accident that happened on the hilltop. Did you hear about that?
No.
Good old Sam boy. Did you hear about good
Oh, I
old
heard he
my
fell
house?
off a ladder.
Yeah, 20 feet. He was up on a ladder with an electrical saw.
When you say Samboy, you mean your husband.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Electrical saw, trying to saw off this nail high up in our wedding barn. And I suppose just the vibration of the saw. So he's holding this big metal object with a running saw, and he falls all the way down to the concrete. The saw crumples into. I'm like, darling, it could have cut you in half on the way down.
Yeah, that's like 20-year-old activity.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
But
come on.
anyway, so my boys were there, and a couple of them, and they're like, "This is it. Dad's gone," because he's having a seizure on the bottom of
He
the
had
ground.
a seizure?
I mean, straight down.
He
It
hit
wasn't
the
a
ground
glide.
and had a
It's
seizure.
it's not a seizure, but it does look like a seizure. When someone goes unconscious and they wake up, it can look like a seizure.
He knocked-
He was
blacked
doing
out?
shaking.
Yes.
He was still knocked out and he was shaking. And they come over to him and they're like, Dad, he won't respond. They lift up his head and blood just pours out. They're like, it's done. It's gone. Like they were traumatized for a good few days. So anyway, he can't remember. The last thing he remembers was, crap, I'm going to hit the ground. And then he can't remember till he's in the ambulance. But anyway, so but he's a miracle. He's a miracle. There's just 3 broken things in his face, like an orbit bone.
Broken eye socket.
Yeah,
Just 3 broken
forehead
things in his
thing
face.
and a septum, but his arm is really still hurting. His arm caught his whole weight, and I don't know what. We've got to go for a new MRI. But anyway, that's all. But that was the first one. That was a real normal thing to do. Go to
But
the
can
ER
I say
for that.
something? He is doing well, so it's fine.
Why
but
do you even show up to the podcast? Like, you go through the most extreme things that would break
That's
me
because
as a
her
man.
husband does things that he said I shouldn't have been doing.
Well, he's
it.
broke you in from
And guess
the
what
beginning.
he admitted to me, and I said, "Did you tell Serene this?" He said, "No." So I'm about to tell you something I shouldn't.
Like, Serene, your typical
Tell.
week sometimes
Tell.
is like my
Yeah.
canon event of my life that if I were to face...
Do you know what he was doing,
Who?
Sam?
Who knows?
He was. And you don't know this. He was high up on that ladder, and he didn't want to get off the ladder and move the ladder to keep doing what he was doing because he had to get it and do it over the a
he
few
was
feet
hopping
away.
it over?
Hopping the ladder.
That's how he fell?
Apparently.
Oh, you just learned this.
Yes.
He said, it's my fault. What happened was my fault.
He's
but-
alive, so I'm
yeah.
not mad.
So did the whole ladder come down?
Well, Pearl was at my house. We heard
Yeah.
sirens.
Yeah.
We heard sirens, and I'm thinking to myself, that siren better not be coming for anyone on the hilltop.
Yeah.
That's what I said. Before I could finish the thought, I get a phone call from Sam, and he's like, I'm in the car with Randy, another guy on the hilltop. In the car with Randy, we're going to the hospital. And immediately, see, Randy has a little daughter the same age as Solly, and my older daughter tutors them and watches them in the afternoon. They just do a little playtime. And I'm thinking to myself, 2 dads, there's been a car accident with the children, and some of them are dead and some of them are in the ambulance, and the fathers are following. That's my first thought. So I start screaming.
Yes, she did.
Where are the children? Like I'm freaking, and Pearl's like, calm down. And then he's like, no, it's me. It's me. And then that doesn't help me at all either.
Yeah, but I'm like, he's speaking. He must be alive. And she starts screaming.
These are my final words.
Yes. But he can't even remember that phone conversation. I think somebody prompted, you better call your wife and it should be your voice, that kind of thing. Anyway, all that to say,
Yeah.
the next emergency trip.
But can I just say something
Yes.
funny? We've got to get on because I know you have a point to all this. The one thing, he lost his memory for a long time. And the only thing he could remember, he couldn't remember the months up to that, but he could only remember being in Scotland with Serene.
What if he went Scottish?
For their
Some
anniversary.
people, they get head
Well,
injuries.
he did. He went Scottish.
No.
This is how he went Scottish. So we were thinking,
Where's my family?
Well, No.
I gotta go. I gotta go see my family.
No, this is how he went Scottish.
I see Sam and he's in a
literally,
kilt from now on.
They won't let me in the ambulance. I follow up with the boys, and it's like it's a real morbid trip up there. But when I finally get to see him, he comes out of the MRI and everything. I finally get to see him, CAT scan, whatever it's called. He's in traction, his neck's all in this thing, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, like maybe he's gonna have like 8 broken ribs, he thought my hips totally broken because he was in so much pain. And I'm thinking hips, for people, that are over 40, hips take a while, I'm thinking, oh no, this is terrible. He hates to sit still. But by the end of the night, they're like, you've just got these broken face bones and your arm's all beaten up and he has big bruises up his body. But it's like, you're fine. So we walked out of there. But they'd cut off his clothes, right? In the ambulance, they just cut you down and stab you with all of their, pain. They had like 2 IVs in him. And so they cut off his clothes. And so he had no clothes to walk out of the hospital in. He had his big work boots. So they gave him his hospital gown.
And his work
boots. So he
boots.
was the Flying Scotsman. It was his kilt. He had this hospital gown for him. Only came to like high thigh. And he was like, what about me ass? So they gave him one for the other side. So he had one on one side, one on the other.
And so he went to the pharmacy like that, right? And with his boots and his hospital gown.
And it's spelled ARSE.
Yes, that's right.
See, you're allowed to do it with an R.
Oh, if it's Scottish.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Anyway, but the real reason that we end up into the emergency room that really bothers me.
Hey, label this a PG, another PG, Mike.
Okay. Is that it bothers me because my little daughter, she ended up going to the emergency room because it was almost like life and death. She got so sick with a cold that some of the children got like 3 or 4 weeks prior, but they were all getting better. But she was not getting better. And she got to the point where she was like gasping for air in the night and just almost drowning in her mucus. Like it was terrible. And we were trying to do all that we could in the nights, but then one night, her heart rate went to 150 and her oxygen we had like a little ox monitor, went to like low 80s. And I'm like, this is not okay. So we rushed to the emergency room. And they were giving her breathing treatments and they put her on oxygen and it wasn't enough. They had to keep upping it and upping and upping it. And she had like in all 4 quadrants of the lungs, she had pneumonia. Oh. And I'm like, oh, freak
Now,
out.
don't think she's a bad mother. Serena had already taken her to a doctor.
Yeah.
And they'd said, oh, okay, she has a cold.
She says bronchitis.
Yeah.
But, it's going to suck for the next week and a half. She's just going to do a lot of coughing up at night. You're just going to probably sit up with her, sit up in the lazy boy, blah, 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 blah. It was like a fast-paced kind of clinic. And they're like, no. I'm like, but I'm really concerned that it could be pneumonia. I'm really worried about it. No, it's not that. And so we went home. It was the next night we went in and it was pneumonia.
That's such a lesson, too, that took us several kids to learn is that, like, you're not always right as a mom, but often your intuition is like doctor level data. Like, because we've had people on both sides, doctors will say, nothing, no worries whatsoever, to find out that it's osteomyelitis. We need an emergency surgery within 24 hours or you could lose his arm. And it's like, no, like my wife was like, no, something is up.
Right.
So like to keep going until,
right.
And we have Vanderbilt in Nashville, so Vanderbilt's a world renowned. People fly in from other countries.
Well, that's where we got our best help. We
100%.
got that's why there were so many trips to the emergency room because we got let out of hospital too early. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of stuff going on, but we ended up getting our final care in Vanderbilt. It was a great experience for that. But then 2 nights ago, another of my daughters ended up having pneumonia and I had to take her into the emergency room. It just wasn't getting better for her either. And I'm thinking, okay, so I'm not being like proud or anything. People get sick when they eat healthy food. Totes they do. But I'm like, why did half of my children just kind of like get better and these 2 really struggled and got a bad case of this deal? Why couldn't their immune system just kick it? I'm like, what's going on? And I was just thinking about this. I'm like, I'm ending up in the hospital, with my child that should have just warded it off. And so as I was thinking this, little Solly, she's 5 years old, says, Mum, this is in the hospital bed, I love Nana's cookies. And I'm like, Nana doesn't make cookies, darling. I mean, you can make healthy cookies, but Nana really doesn't have the time. She doesn't make cookies. What do you mean Nana's Oh, she does. I love Nana's cookies and I eat them all up. And I'm like, where do you get Nanny's cookies? Oh, I get them in the shed, Granddad's shed. You know, so the story behind that is, you know, in the last potty, my son was talking about how he would sneak donuts because Granddad, for years, he goes to the day-old bakery stuff from all the grocery stores.
He's got a private stash.
And no, he doesn't like
it.
sweets.
No?
But he gets them and he takes them to the poor. It's his little missions thing. He takes bread up to the helping hands.
He doesn't nibble on the way to the poor.
No, he doesn't really love
Well,
he more likes meat pies and dim sums and savory things.
Look at Arden's face, though. He's like,
Anyway,
eats them on the way
Granddad
to
has
the
a
poor.
nibble.
Thank you.
Granddad has a nibble.
But anyway,
he has a nibble.
but sometimes there'll be a little stash that Mum will keep aside for the people for the potluck church that like sugary stuff. So there'll be a little stash there. Well, Solly found that stash and thought, you know, everything's THM. You know what I mean? My children are raised that you can eat cake for breakfast because cake is healthy, right?
On plan.
So she's like, I love Nana's. She was not feeling guilty when she tells me I eat Nanny's cookies all up. So I'm like, oh my goodness.
And she was going over there every day, right?
Because my daughter tutors her over there. And so not necessarily over there, but they often go to the field because there's other little children of the hilltop and they'll play. And oftentimes Solly will go into the restroom. It's not my daughter's fault, but the older one. But she'll go to the restroom and she'll probably run to the shed quickly and grab a cookie or two.
Of course. She
So
knows
she
where
was
the
eating them all
stash
up.
is.
And I'm thinking, oh, it makes sense. And this was the week when she started really getting downhill. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, she was just sabotaging her immune system. And the other daughter that's ended up with a pneumonia, I found out she was the ringleader, the older one. She was 11.
But she knew they were.
one.
She knew they weren't healthy, though, right?
Yes, but she said, so-and-so said we were allowed. Some other child on the hilltop said we were allowed. Oh my goodness. I had to give her a big lecture. But anyway, all that to say, it got me started. And I've always known that sugar's bad. We all know. The whole world knows that sugar's bad. The whole world.
Well, can I just stop you right there?
Yes.
Because you're saying the word bad. And a lot of
I'm
people,
so
right?
put-
I know what you're going to
don't
say.
get me
I'm
mad.
I'm doing it so you can say something about this.
Okay.
I'm not wanting to argue with it about this, but I'm bringing the elephant out into the room.
Mm-hmm.
You are calling a food bad,
Yes,
and
I
many
am.
people these days get triggered by it. So I want you to go state your piece.
Can I state my piece? Do you know there are bad things and there are good things? And this whole politically correct scene now where you can't call anything bad, it's like you're not allowed to use judgment in case you trigger somebody or in case you put something in a bad light. Well, sugar needs to be put in a bad light. Now, I think sugarcane, sucking on a cane of sugar, like we've gone to the markets, you know, in different countries, and you can just get those whole canes in Mexico, you know, and they can just suck on it and
Drop one in your coffee.
Delicious. Yeah.
Whatever.
And
Like-
and you even have a little bit of sugar, like in 85% chocolate. You wouldn't mind it or something.
Right.
You're not talking about that.
I'm talking about sugar abuse, real table white sugar in foods in excess. And I'm calling that bad.
Can I bring up one thing and then you can keep going? Because I understand where you're coming from. Some people who have started diets, you know, when they were 8 years old and they were forced on them and just yo-yo throughout their whole life and were told, you know, this is bad, I can't eat that. You're only going to eat grapefruits for a week. Yeah. They feel triggered because it has been a bondage to them of looking at.
I know, but this is where I'd like to bring balance. And I'm going to take a deep breath and use mic control.
Good.
Speak gently to the world. I know people too, and I hope this doesn't offend anyone, who were raised differently and they were in the nightclub scene, you know, and they were into all kinds of nightlife that they don't.
Raised when they got older.
Yeah. Like they didn't have boundaries. So that when they're in their teen years, they just kind of went into scenarios that were not good and they don't feel proud of that. And I know people from that have switched from that and now they don't believe in dancing. They think the drum beat's from the devil because it kind of brings up some base passions, they say, right? Where a heart is a drum beat, right?
Right.
And the Africans go to church to the drum beat, you know, and they wiggle their bum on the way too.
Yeah.
It's all cultural.
I don't mind wiggling my bum.
But they go from one in extreme and they're like, okay, because I don't want to be there anymore, I'm going to go to the other extreme. And that's what I'm cautioning.
Okay.
Just because you were told, you know, that you don't want it, or say, just because you come from an extreme case where you feel like you felt shame for food and you were felt to feel condemnation for food, now you don't want to call anything bad. I feel like you're going to the other extreme, and I feel like discernment and judgment is still needed. And there are foods and that are inherently bad because they destroy your body.
You know what though? Sometimes the sugar can be the shame that's talking. You know, like
Right.
like you think it's like, I don't want to feel shame around food. It's like you or the sugar in you
Yeah, right.
doesn't kind of wants you to have a little hiding place, because like, why is it so emotional? I mean, I get how food can make you emotionally good,
Right.
and emotionally bad, but why is it emotional surrounding the like sanity in giving up abusing sugar? There should who's triggering? Like, is this real? Like, people are out there like angry with people that
You're not
trying
allowed
to
to call.
encourage them.
You're not
I've
allowed
heard
to
it, You're not
call.
allowed to call food bad, but I can do whatever I jolly
You're
well
allowed
want.
to, and it's
so-
your party.
Yeah. So
I'm just going to
I'm-
say, I just
yeah.
wanted to show
Yeah.
you, that there will be conflict.
But I have taught my children that too. I'm just like, there are foods that are excellent. There are foods
Yeah.
that are good. There are foods that are super. And there are foods that are treats, and there are foods that are bad.
Why is there conflict? Is there actually a danger in saying that abusing sugar is bad? Is someone
Yes, because
harmed?
people feel like it can bring on shame and condemnation and not freedom.
But they need that because they're not going to get free unless they feel the discernment, unless they have a clear synaptic understanding that to have it. If you stop saying it's bad, then I feel like the discernment.
Well, you
gets
see, to
taken
me, I
away.
look at it a little differently. Honestly, I think a lifestyle of sugar is harmful. But
I'm
as
not-
I said last party, maybe twice a year, I will eat a donut or something. And to me, because it's not my lifestyle, to me, it's
But
not
you still
bad.
know that food
It's definitely not healthy
no,
for
that
me.
pleasurable
Yeah.
experience is not bad because it's twice a year.
Yeah.
But you still know that food is a bad food for your body, so you don't want to eat it more than twice a year.
Right.
You still have the discernment, and that's what I'm trying to ask people to have the discernment. And so that's what I meant by bad. And now, when I was in Vanderbilt, they did excellent for us. They are an awesome hospital.
Yeah, they're
You know,
like Disneyland for sick kids.
and my son, who battled cancer for over 6 years, they were amazing with him, and we appreciate them. But I do have to say, the what they call nutrition center, where the mummies get to go and get little snacks for the children that are sick, or it's also to nurture the parents too. Or siblings who are staying in the room so that they can have energy for the long nights, the long hauls with staying up with the sick babies and all those beeps that are going on. I would like to say that all that food in there is BAD, capital B, capital A, capital D. There was
Mandy.
nothing
She's so unafraid.
with nutrition. And I felt all kinds of thoughts. I thought we could get trim healthy mama food in here.
Yeah.
I was thinking, where is the, because we can't call it in society bad, there is now this big hole of where knowledge and understanding does not meet common sense, and we have junk food in there. Like it was Teddy Graham's crackers. That was one of the snacks. It was
Yo,
high
Teddy
fructose
Grahams.
corn syrup little custard cups. It was the imitation flavored non-fat yogurts. It was all kinds of pop. It was CRAP. That's even
Do you
worse
think there
than
could be, because I'm always wanting, like in my head, I have this fantasy that I'm going to, like, I don't have a YouTube channel. I thought about launching a YouTube channel, right? And maybe I will. And I was like, well, what would I say on the YouTube channel? And like one of the fantasies is this video where I'm like calling for like the government to change the public school educational system, and that someone in the government would actually see it, someone that could pass laws and implement change, or a group of people, and then they would be like, yeah, all right, I saw this video and I was inspired. And they actually go and they teach kids things they'll use in life, not just the act of learning hard things, which I don't believe in. There's a time for that, by the way, but like a very much smaller percentage. But like so much of school, public school, is a lot of learning, a lot of useless stuff. There is so much that's useless. And I was rebellious as a teen, and I was like, this is all crap. And they're like, well, when you get older, you'll see. But I'm older now. I got kids in college, and it's a lot of crap. And so I've been sort of reworking my kids' schooling. One of my sons is homeschooled.
Yeah.
And we have a super cool school paradigm that he's doing, and it is so useful, and he loves it. He actually loves school. Like, raise your hand if you love school. No hands are up. Nobody likes school, but he loves his school for the first time in his life.
Wow.
But that's so like with, food in hospitals, it's so easy for us to sit here and say, of course, that high fructose corn syrup will weaken your immune system. You're in a children's hospital. Why would you not tomorrow remove all of it?
Yes.
And bring in like plants and meat and things that are going to not cure children. We get that it's not all inclusive, but it's going to
But it's
help
part of it.
provide
It
an
is.
infrastructure for the medicine to work better. Why would that not happen tomorrow?
Fruits. Imagine, I mean, like,
There was no fresh fruit. There was, in fact, when I ordered off of the menu, Vanderbilt was better. But it was. But there's another hospital in the town. The vegetables looked like they'd been sat on by a mangy horse for 7 years. And rats had nibbled on the edges. I ordered a hummus and
Mangy
veggie
horse.
plate. I couldn't, and they were bendy.
oh,
And I was like, what? I don't even understand it. But I do have some stuff.
Well,
I
is
do
it
wanna-
is it a budget thing? Like I'm not trying to criticize because while I sit upon my padded chair, I mean some of these hospital workers are like front lines saving kids' lives.
Look,
so I'm not here
lentil
judging that.
soup, like oatmeal that's not just quick oats and filled with sugar and
yeah, but you
everything
see,
like that.
kids
That's
aren't
cheap
even
food.
used to eating that, so they're not about to
I
start.
know, but
It's the
kids
whole
aren't
thing.
used to being hooked up to chemo yet either.
That's
Kids
what
aren't
I'm
used to
saying.
a lot of stuff they go to hospital for.
But you see what the reason they do it is because they want people to buy it because people are used to buying that.
Right.
You know,
That's
as
the
I
reason.
said-
But I think it should be changed.
Yes.
As I talk about doing this YouTube thing, I forget we're on YouTube. I'm saying it right now. So maybe, and somebody could be in the system that could be like, yeah, I could make some phone calls, and it may not change nationwide, but at my local clinics, at my kids' hospitals, maybe
I think
something could
they're
happen.
trying, and I think it can be made delicious. All their milkshakes are made in the base of ice cream. I just can't even. I don't have words. But anyway, I do want to say this: that I got so fired up. I even called my mum, and I'm like, "Mum, that stash has got to go from that shed." I mean, and I also talked to her about Sunday potluck. I'm like, is there any way we can nicely say to the people who bring sugar, like, is there any way we can nicely say, if you don't have children, but you're bringing it for the children, you don't have to stay up in the hospital for a week every night, like freaking out
so
that they're going
fair.
to die. Do you have to like deal with the moods? You know how you said your daughter gets the pitchfork out when she gets on a junk food
Yes.
mood? I'm like, why are people not, they don't have to deal with the consequences, but they love to feed our children sugar.
Yes.
And I'm like, is there any way we can nicely say, hey, we appreciate you bringing stuff, but if you're bringing it just for the children, which most of them do, just if they are not your children, you don't have to deal with the consequences.
Yeah.
Maybe think about
Yeah,
that.
this is a message for all the grandparents out there. This holiday season, when you want to be the hero, coming in, swinging in with the cookies, like think about somebody else for the first time.
Well,
in
I
your
think,
life.
this is very timely. This is about to go out right before the sugar season, okay? So keep going.
Yeah, I just want to say,
Did you even label this party yet?
well, I thought that, I was going to call it if you give a girl a cookie, but really it's if a girl steals a cookie,
Like the consequences if you
the
give a
book,
mouse a cookie.
If you give a
No.
mouse a cookie.
Yeah,
Because
they
there
want
is
a
a
glass of
domino
milk.
effect. So in my life, it's if a girl steals a cookie, she's going to get a cough.
She's going to go to the
If
ER.
she's going to get a cough, she's going to end up drowning on her phlegm. If she's drowning on her phlegm, her mum's going to have a panic attack in the house. If the mum's having a panic attack in the house, they're going to drive 90 miles an hour to the emergency room, and it all spirals down from there.
Yes. That would be a great book if you give a mouse a cookie and then go down that stair step of hell. That it leads to, and it
I
all
would
leads
love
to
to
the
write that book. I would love to write that
It's
book.
gonna be
This
a
whole
bestseller.
mouse a cookie ends to a glass of milk and ends to a picture that you put on your fridge.
Yeah.
That is so the fairy tale. It's not even true.
It is the fairy tale.
The
and
mouse dies at the end of this book.
I know in the fairy tale it ends with this beautiful bonding moment
I
between
know.
like I don't know about the book itself, but that is the now I just in this podcast I just got angry with old people all of a sudden because I have my youngest is 10. So it's not so much anymore, but I remember when we were having toddlers, in the 5-year-old and
Yeah.
younger.
It's the little ones and it's dangerous.
that are so affected by the sugar overdose, by the cute little smiling grandparents.
Because they don't have a turn off.
Yeah.
So you think they've had one cookie.
It makes me furious.
And then they've had 7.
Yeah,
you
and they
know?
peanut
'Cause they're
butter vomit.
puppies.
They
you know how
peanut
puppies
butter
don't know when
vomit
to stop?
all night
Yes.
at both ends.
But why then? We
Okay,
need
so
to
let's
get
talk
into
about it. Okay, so I have been in the hospital all week. I only just kind of got out the other day, only to return with my other daughter, which didn't have to stay, but it was a long, 5 hours in the emergency. Oh, I forgot to say, when I got Solace home, then she got allergic to the penicillin, the amoxicillin, and she got angioedema of the face. And
She had to go back.
She had to go back.
Which is
because
like
she was a
you're
swollen
covered in
plum,
sores, yeah.
Covered it, yeah. And so anyway, so I haven't had time to really rewrite this into my own words. I just copied and pasted a bunch of PubMed stuff. So I'm just going to speak
Are
out.
we a controversial podcast?
But
I feel
but we all
controversial. I
know
don't want to be.
studies show they've shown for years that sugar intake suppresses the immune system. There's no new billboard for all of us. But it's actually interesting because we know that, and that's why diabetics oftentimes, are more prone to infections.
Yeah.
Because they have so much high blood sugar all the time in their system, and that's why they were the comorbidity for COVID too. Because you're more susceptible to get viruses in the air
Yeah, we're
because
getting shut
your high
down
blood
now.
sugar is high. But children are being allowed to have this in their system.
Yeah.
They get pre-diabetic. I feel like I'm on a high horse. And I feel righteously allowed to be here just for this podcast.
Yeah, you know what?
There are 7-year-olds with
Yeah.
diabetic tires and parents thinking, oh, I'm going to get healthy, and they eat healthy and they're trying to kick their pop habit, but they're still allowing pop to be in the house. They're still allow their children to walk into these diseases. And I'm just trying to question it today and say, in the podcast before this, we talked about oftentimes it takes their own experience to learn before they really get maybe a real an anchor into the idea of health for themselves. But I do want to challenge it and say, is it fair for us to wait for them to actually have to get diseases and actually have to get where they're desperate and they're ill? I don't want my children to have diabetic tires around their waist at 7 and 10. This is a problem of the modern age. Children used to run around wiry. There was the occasional child with metabolic issues, and it was you can get even a child in a family. They all eat the same.
Mm-hmm.
One child will have a metabolic issue. That's a genetic thing that they need help with. There's no shame of that. They need to get help. But a lot of the problems we're seeing today in our modern age is inflicted on them from the diet they're allowed to eat. And their mum and dad may not even eat that kind of diet, but they just think, oh, it's okay. I can't change it for my children. I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want the fits. And so they allow it. But I'm saying, what is better? Having a little bit of that, where there's a little bit of the conflict where you're changing over the way you eat in the home. Isn't that better than having a serious conflict on a cellular level in your child's system, or setting them up for metabolic issues for life that actually metabolically injure them? And it's so much harder to turn around. You can turn it around, but it's hard. So many of our Trim Healthy listeners, they've had that hard turnaround where it hasn't been easy for them, where it's been, it's been a decade of a health journey for them to finally get in the direction of goal weight. And so I'm pleading, let's have a sane look at this whole thing again about sugar, and especially sugar for our children. Too much sugar in your system, it allows the bacteria viruses to propagate much more because your initial innate system doesn't work as well. And that what happens is the killer cells, and we all know this, the white blood cells, they're just inhibited. They're almost paralyzed for 5 hours just after eating one sugary, I think it's up to like 70 grams of sugar. If you go to a petrol station and you read the back of any of those little Pop-Tarts, those little normal granola bars.
They're like 50 to 80.
Yes.
Wow.
It easily falls into that category. And you've got 5 hours where your killer cells are totally disabled. And the biggest problem here is when I said, it hinders that first front line, that innate response of your immune system, because it drives up inflammatory cytokines, which damages the blood vessel and activates your immune system to go repair all of this damage. So instead of your immune system coming to actually ward off the dangerous invaders, bacteria, viruses. It's actually fixing damage that's done by the inflammation of the sugar.
Okay.
So it's a major
yeah.
distraction, really.
So
of the
we're
immune
not talking
system.
like, I think, in the past when I heard stuff like this, I didn't really take it seriously in that I thought, okay, sugar weakens the immune system. We're talking 1%, but nothing that would actually be felt in my life. I
Right.
just would, it would theoretically, yes,
Right.
hurt the immune system.
No, basically,
But we're
you could
talking-
sleep 8 hours. You could have drunken all your 4 quarts of water or whatever your whole thing is. You can have had no sodas the day before and been in a, working out in the gym and then go eat crap at the petrol station, and for 5 hours your immune system is disabled.
Yeah.
And
like
children are having that every time grandma comes to visit.
Yeah, and it's the other way too, right? Like I would always picture that, eating the right foods, strengthen, vitamin C, for example, strengthens the immune system. I would picture it like, yeah, sort of, maybe, kind of, but like I'm actually once I think too that I started like getting my body more healthy and able to eat healthy food and feeling better and brighter, which sounds so crazy, like feeling better, not better morally. I mean, better like in my body, like
Cellularly.
and
yeah.
I felt smarter. It's wild too. I mean, I've only been on this journey since I started this podcast, so it's a little unfair for me. I get like this weekly dose, right? And so I mean, I don't know. I guess that's why this podcast is powerful for people.
It's your health church.
It's a
Danny.
weekly dose.
Health
But
church.
yeah, I get to sit in the midst. But I've felt in the past couple years, like in my brain, I'll just be going through the day and it'll just be like this little, and it feels like honey and good. Like, it's like I'm feeling more too.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm feeling like almost euphoric, almost like back in the drug days, like, oh, I'm feeling kind of high here. But it's like this, like just this good feeling in my body that it feels connected to the way I eat. Like it's felt is my whole point here.
Inflammation is a sugar fog that comes to the brain.
Yeah.
And I'll talk about that later. And I want you to talk now, Pearl, but I just want to say, soon we're going to talk about how it actually affects the neuro.
Oh, yeah. Well, I did have to say, I used to hear from a lot of trim healthy mamas that came from a sugar lifestyle, and I've never been on a sugar lifestyle, but came from it, and they would have a hard time, transferring away from sugar, and then they'd start to feel so good. And then they'd put sugar in their bodies, like Nadia, who's been on this potty, put sugar in their body. They literally feel it. And I was like, I never feel it.
That's why I asked you about the jelly donut in the other podcast
No,
or whatever.
I never really do. I mean, I think it's because I never had a problem with it, maybe.
Sure, yeah.
So it doesn't really affect me. However, in the last couple of years, I've adopted so many more of your ways, Serene. I'm a kefir person. I feel like I've upped my health, like significantly. I just love the way I eat. I have blueberries every single day. I have salmon almost every day. I'm just eating the foods that I love that are best for me. Now I do notice a difference. If I just go out to a restaurant and just have a meal, and it's not something that I've made at home and I'm doing that for a couple of days, I literally am starting to feel a difference just because those superfoods are not coming into me.
Yeah.
And I feel this, like I have more aches and pains.
That's happened since the amino acids for me.
Really?
Yeah, adding amino acids when I don't, it's like, like I never wanted to feel addicted to anything. Like I've never been I'll drink coffee infrequently.
Yeah,
because I don't ever want to get hooked. Because I know what it's like. If I drink coffee 2 days in a row, day 3, no coffee, is crazy. I'm like sick and can't do anything. So I'm real sensitive to stuff like that. But I notice in a good way, without that amino acid what's it doing?
The essential? Oh, it's just repairing everything in your body.
Oh, just that. Yeah, just fixing everything. And you feel it when it's not there. And
Yeah,
I
you
feel
do.
really like more on point mentally.
Oh, it's so huge
Is that
for the
an
brain.
amino acid?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
It
thing?
takes glucose and energy to the brain.
Maybe that's the euphoria because I'm feeling like good when I say good, I mean like borderline, like I took a drug or something.
And we want to, and let's get back to this children thing,
Yeah.
and us too. When we give them sugar and then expect them to behave like wonderful members of society, we're almost we're asking something, and we're setting them up for failure, and also ask them to concentrate on school. You know, we're setting them up for failure when we're feeding them this junk. And sometimes we think we're feeding them healthy, like a low-fat sweetened yogurt, just a regular yogurt. You know, one that you haven't worried has stevia in it. It's just, here's a low-fat yogurt. You know, a peach Yoplait or whatever, Dannon, whatever.
You're calling out
47
names.
grams of sugar is in an average normal yogurt. And these are
in one of those
small
little
things.
cups.
They're not even, they're like quarter cup weird things.
Yeah, they're tiny.
It's not even a cup of sugar
Yeah.
or
Yes.
of yogurt. That's how many grams of sugar?
47 is the average.
That's all sugar in some
And
yogurt.
then think of your young bucks, your young teen boys. Sports drinks can have the low end is 35 grams of sugar per one.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just normal. And so, you know, I just want to read a little bit here. Elevated glucose in the blood leads to excessive pro-inflammatory cytokine production. High sugar intake has long been recognized as a potential environmental risk factor for increased incidence of many non-communicable diseases, including obesity, cardiovascular disease, metabolic syndrome, and type 2 diabetes. But I just want to stop there for a second. What about communicable diseases? Because my child succumbed, you know, to communicable diseases, things that they would normally have warded off. My children haven't had flus in forever. But, you know, that sugar had made them part of the communicable deal that's going around.
Well,
You
it made
feel
them
that-
not be able to get over them.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you think there's a correlation too in, you know, winter and sickness with the increase in sugar as well?
Well, I mean, Halloween, October 31st, right? Think about it. Every beginning of every season, basically the fall winter season, it starts with massive amounts of sugar.
Massive amount. Yeah.
I always did let my children get some, but it was after that first night, it's gone.
You let them participate in Lucifer's
I
birthday?
did let them participate, but we didn't do Lucifer stuff. We called it, you know, fall day.
Oh,
and
you
they got to
Christianed
dress
it up?
I Christianed it up.
That's cute.
But, you know, I would allow, like, they were allowed to, they loved to, because it's all about for my boys who could get the most, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was
for
like
sure.
a competition.
It's like a mindless amount of...
But they could do it. But then they couldn't keep it in the house after that first night because
Yeah.
it was going to make our season horrible.
Yeah, well, so that's tough because, we let our kids participate and they have these pillowcases, like filled to the top, not with pillows, but with candy. And we live in a decent town. Like, we got the good stuff.
your neighborhood.
Full
Oh, my
Snickers
goodness.
bars. Y'all need to come
I'm
in.
going to bring the balance just for people listening that don't do Halloween.
Yeah.
I don't do Halloween. So you can still stay and listen to
Oh,
the
look at
potty.
her. She broke the fourth wall and she said it all proudly.
Oh,
No.
she did. She got
Not
haughty,
proudly,
didn't she?
Not proudly. I just
No,
wanted to
she's
connect
reaching
with
out.
the-
She's reaching
I
out
wanted
to her
connect
conservatives.
With the listeners.
That don't.
Thank you, Pearl. Okay, let me continue here.
Okay.
The consumption of high sugar beverages and processed foods has increased significantly over the past 30 years. I thought to myself it was decreasing. In my brain, I'm like, people must know. After being in Vanderbilt, I realized they don't know. Here we summarize the effects of... I've just copied and pasted. Sorry for the plagiarizing, guys. I didn't have time because I was at the hospital with my sugared children.
You're PubMeding it out.
Yeah, PubMeding out. We summarize the effects of consuming high levels of dietary hexose on rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, psoriasis, inflammatory bowel disease, and low-grade chronic inflammation. Based on these reported findings, we emphasize that dietary sugars and mixed processed foods may be a key factor leading to the occurrence and aggravation of inflammation. We concluded that by revealing the roles that excessive intake of hexose, that sugar, has on the regulation of human inflammatory diseases are fundamental questions that need to be solved urgently. Moreover, close attention should also be paid to the combination of high glucose-mediated immune imbalance and tumor development. Cancer
Okay,
forming from sugar.
Could I interrupt you there?
Yes.
Because this is where, you know, I've been feeling a little bit judgy on this podcast because I'm coming against sugar like some pro. And I mean, God knows I've slipped my sugar into sometimes. But here's where it got real for me personally, is that you're talking about inflammation and gut issues and the lining of the gut being
we're going to go
stripped.
deeper. Yes, we will.
Right. So I heard this quote is like, everybody wants to talk about, and I'm not saying food is evil or good, but you are.
I am.
I'm not.
I am.
But I agree with you, but not publicly.
Make
so
you stand, Dan.
so everybody, I've heard this phrase, we all want to say there's evil in the world, but nobody wants to put a face on it. Like nobody wants to talk about where. It's just like, oh, the evil out there. But we don't want to like talk about like certain media outlets. We don't want to talk about certain educational systems, you know. Not that anyone
I don't mind talking about
No,
it.
we
Yeah, that's her other podcast.
that's the Serene Show. You know, but there was a while where when I first started working with you two, and I would say, okay, sure, food can really tear your body down. I believe that theoretically, but I didn't want to put like a name to it. I didn't want to say choosing that refined white sugar will give me inflammatory bowel disease, and it will do it for sure.
Yeah.
And I wanted, and I was hallucinating. I was living in a hallucination that it ran in my family. That's actually where I started with you.
And I love what you said, and it will do it for sure. It will do it for sure.
For
now,
sure.
Pearl
It will cause inflammation.
only has it
for
twice
sure.
a year. So it
Well,
won't do
no,
it.
probably more than that sugar on a whole.
No,
but
but
my
like a
donut,
treat.
my donut.
Yeah, you have 85% sugar. I'm not talking about
Yeah.
that. Her donut twice a year, right? So it's not going to do it for sure. But a child doesn't have those parameters. And when you bring it into the house or you allow them to have whatever at the potluck table, I'm just trying to say that's not twice a year. They will be coming down with these things. I'm not trying to be morbid. For sure. America is ill. For sure.
For sure.
So fructose and glucose are both considered to be sweet sugars, right?
You're going to have to paraphrase because we're not allowed to read from something. We get in trouble.
Oh, I'm paraphrasing a lot. I'm changing a lot here. You know, a lot of people say, well, I keep away from high fructose corn syrup. They think that's the baddie. Well, it is very, very bad. But glucose in excess is just as bad. They have different reasons why they're bad.
Sucrose is not just glucose. Sugar is not just glucose.
I know it's high fructose corn syrup. High fructose. It's fructose too.
Yeah, fructose
But
too.
you know, the United States currently is the major user of high fructose corn syrup out of all the countries
Yes,
in
and
the
do you
world.
know Arden just sent me something?
But
Your
high
son.
fructose corn syrup is now produced throughout the world with factories on every continent except for the Antarctica. And we know that it's causing disease.
Yeah.
But the factories are on every continent of the world.
Yeah.
I'm just upset right now in a holy, righteous way.
Well, it's addictive. I mean, it's an addictive drug.
What does
But
this
do
say?
you
Arden,
know-
look, he just sent me. He said in the 1900s, the average person had how much? Half a pound of sugar per year. And now what is it?
It's like probably that a day, if not more.
Yeah.
At the beginning,
he just said probably
at the
that a
beginning
day
of the 21st century.
Probably that a day.
I am paraphrasing all this. At the beginning of the 21st century, the U.S. Department of Agriculture reported that the consumption of soft drinks per capita in the United States had increased by about 500% over the past 50 years. 500%.
Yeah.
So fructose intake actually promotes more lipid deposition in the visceral adipose tissue, like around the organs. But the glucose consumption appears to favor more subcutaneous adipose
Yes.
tissue. They're both bad.
Okay, so this is what Arden sent me. In 1700, the average person consumed about 4.9 grams of sugar each day. And then it goes 1800, 1900, it creeps up. But in 2009, it's probably worse because you said in the last 10 years it's got worse. The average person consumes approximately 227 grams of sugar per day.
Per day.
Look, I'm
That's 81 kilograms per year.
relevant randomized control trials have also
are we doing?
confirmed that people who drink at least one soft drink a day, people that get down to one, they think they're doing good, have a 44% higher risk of developing metabolic syndrome than people who do not drink soft drinks. One a day. A lot of parents are like, well, they just have one a day and then I'll make them drink their water and have their baby carrots. One a day gives them a 44% higher risk of developing metabolic syndrome.
And that like 44%, like there's 10 people in a room. You all drink a Coke
One
a day.
Coke a day. Almost
Five
half.
of you, half of you will develop.
Analysis of the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, number 3,
That's
related
real.
mortality cohort data shows that the intake of added sugar can lead to the occurrence of hypertension, stroke, coronary heart disease, and dyslipidemia, thereby increasing the risk of death. And it's got the PubMed, Huang et al. Studied, Sprague, Dawley, whatever. Anyway, they had rats, Sprague-Dawley rats with fructose in their diet and found for the first time that a high fructose diet was associated with hypertension. See, a lot of times they're well, my husband, he doesn't really have
he
metabolic
can't eat
issues.
salt because he's got high blood pressure.
He's not fat, so he can have his sodas.
Yeah.
But he's got hypertension. It's coming from his sodas.
Well, what they do is they take people off salt,
A
and
lot
it's
of
the sugar
husbands
doing
will
it.
Will be like, I can eat this sugar crap. Look at me, I don't gain weight. All their strokes and heart disease and blood pressure issues, they're from these sugars.
There's gym bros dying of heart issues, and they're muscular. They look all because they're burning off their sugar. They're, I say burning it off. It's still.
And there's I can cite the studies,
It's
but several
inflammation.
other statistical studies conducted follow-up surveys of different populations and concluded that sugar intake is positively correlated with coronary heart disease, vascular events, heart failure, and stroke. It is necessary to strengthen the social supervision of sugary processed foods. That's why I'm trying to strengthen the social supervision of our potluck at church.
Do it.
The World Health Organization,
This message
the
is for you.
WHO, which is not necessarily the strongest, I'll put it nicely, believes that sugar's consumption varies with age and country, and their guidelines strongly recommending reduce intake to less than 10% of total energy intake. That's not happening. It's not happening in our hospitals. The Scientific Advisory Committee on Nutrition in England has also issued a similar policy recommending that the upper limit of sugar intake should not exceed 5%. Europe is always a little bit more,
Yeah, they care about
strict.
quality of foods. They don't allow aspartame over there.
Really?
The impact of sugars on inflammation was previously unknown. They thought it was just immune system, but they're realizing now that excessive sugar intake is closely associated with the development of low-grade chronic inflammation and autoimmune diseases. It's linked to
Speaking of people that face hard things, like we talked last party about Art and your son who face cancer. My daughter Autumn and we kept saying, oh, she's so crunchy. She makes up for some of my others in my family that aren't. But there was a trigger for her. She developed an autoimmune disease, psoriasis, and, she's a beautiful young girl and large patches of psoriasis on her arms and knees. And
it was a strep virus.
yeah, it came from a strep virus originally. But that was the thing that made her so crunchy. She was like, well, she started to read about autoimmune. Sugar is the exasperator of it. Sugar causes it. Sugar makes it so much worse. It's just she went off sugar. She hasn't touched. She's like Arden. Because she is fighting something, she hasn't touched sugar. She's still not quite over her psoriasis. Cleared up so much, though, just going off sugar and just eating all the superfoods that she has. But she still struggles with the essence of it there, but it's nothing like it was.
Oh,
Is Hashimoto's a sugar problem?
Well, Hashimoto's is autoimmune.
Right.
I mean, we can't directly relate everything. You ate a bit of sugar and now you have Hashimoto's. It's just that obviously it wears
Sugar
down
is-
your immune
it's
system,
just
right?
revealed now that dietary sugar is a key factor in inducing this low-grade chronic inflammation, which does exacerbate autoimmune and can trigger autoimmune diseases and even neuroinflation.
You were
So
going to
the
talk about
brain.
the brain,
Yes.
before we go.
But no, actually, I want to move on to the gut. But I just
Oh.
wanted to say, we're at 48, so I just want to. Gut is more of our deal right now.
I do need to hear the brain for me too. So let's do gut and brain. Let's do them quick.
Adipose tissue is, but interestingly, I just wrote this down. I just copy and pasted this. Do you know adipose tissue is one of the largest endocrine organs in our body?
So our
And
fat
affects
tissue.
local and systemic immune function and metabolism by secreting inflammatory factors. Isn't that interesting? So when we're overweight, it's not just that it's unhealthy for our organs, and we always call it inflammatory weight. Remember?
Yes.
But it's actually because it's actually
Secreting
imbalancing
things.
our hormones.
It's secreting things?
Yes.
What
It's
is it secreting?
Inflammatory factors,
Wow.
and it becomes our largest endocrine organ. Isn't that interesting?
That is fascinating.
Then I could tell you what it secretes and go on, but let's go on. The gut microbiome has also been the focus of research in the effects of dietary sugars on inflammation. It mainly includes two aspects. High consumption of sugar reduces microbial diversity and leads to depletion of luminal short-chain fatty acids. The short-chain fatty acids can affect the recruitment of colonic regulatory T cells and the antibacterial activity of macrophages.
Well, to put it in plain language, short chain
Right.
fatty acids.
It affects those T cells, which you're fighting killer cells, and it basically puts them in what do you call it? In straitjackets.
Yes, but short chain fatty acids are absolute crucial, Serene, for your metabolism. If you don't have a large, robust amount of short chain fatty acids, you are almost fat loss resistant.
Exactly.
Short chain fatty acids fuel your body to burn fat. And so sugar destroys them.
And therefore, it affects the intestinal mucosal immune system.
Okay.
The damaged intestinal barrier is unable to prevent the invasion of pathogenic microorganisms.
In other words, leaky gut.
Shashan Shah, and it must be the doctor, and colleagues suggest that high glucose can increase the levels of inflammatory cytokines, the IL interleukin 6, and the TNF, and there's all these like speaking in tongues things that I'll just leave out for everyone, by altering gut microbiota composition, mucosal association, and functional activity, thereby aggravating the progression of inflammatory bowel disease. And it goes on about, Pearl, the other day when you were talking about the gut, it said that the Bacillus fragilis and Prevotella are abundant in mice fed with a high glucose diet, while the relative abundance of the sugar-soluble bacteria Saccharomyces is capable of transplanting to the, it's all this doctor speak. But basically, those things induce an inflammatory response. But in contrast, the abundance of the Lactospiraceae and the Lactobacilli
And that comes from
belonging
like
to the
kefir.
firmicutes, which you were saying, we've got to get the
Yes.
firmicutes. They all decrease. With high sugar, they decrease in your gut lining.
Wow, so it kills off the firmicutes, and firmicutes are what you need.
Yes. Yep. And it goes on and on and on about how...
Can you tell me something about the brain? Because Danny's brain's kind of fading right now.
Well, Pearl,
My brain's not fading.
Pearl,
It is.
I don't have it here.
Oh, you don't? I was waiting for the brain
had it.
stuff.
I had it that it
All I remember is from our studies, especially in children.
I was copying and pasting, and I thought I copied and pasted, but
That's
I had
all right.
also deleted a bunch
I'll
of stuff.
explain it. And
But I had put down
You
that
can
it
help me before we leave because
called
we're
as
going.
neuroinflammation.
Especially in children, though. We used to think that sugar in children, remember we would call it a sugar rush, and like, children are in a
yes.
sugar rush, and they go mad, and pretty soon they'll crash. And what they've found out now is it's actually not a sugar rush.
It's a fight or flight.
It's fight or flight. It's actually a surge of adrenaline because the body senses a lot of sugar. The body knows it's harmful. The
body senses an emergency.
Yeah.
That's why it's fight or flight.
and sends out a surge of adrenaline that empowers children. They go nuts. They're like, it's like getting a shot of adrenaline when you've seen it on a movie. Someone's
yeah.
like this, and then they show them, and then they're like, oh, I'm Superman again. And then I go, defeat the bad guy because I got a shot of adrenaline.
Yeah.
And that's basically what happens to children.
Yes, it's not a sugar high. It's an adrenaline.
A shot of adrenaline, which is so harmful because it taxes the adrenal glands. It pulls down the immune system, having that much adrenaline in your system.
Actually, the sugar high is really a sugar low. You get this
Yeah.
adrenal rush, and then you get this
And then a tank.
the tanking.
Yeah, so I guess that's was that to do with the brain? Not really.
Well, the fact is that you can feel it anecdotally. You've felt it, Danny. You get the fog of the brain.
But can we just come to a little bit of balance right at the end of this
don't
before
know
we
about
leave?
that.
I know you don't want some, but I'd love to bring some.
I don't know about that.
I
I
agree
wanted
that
to hit
sugar.
home
I
hard
loved
and
it,
heavy.
and I let you, and I loved it, and it was called
But
for.
don't end with.
I want to end with
light
something.
icing.
No, I want to say something. You should
Like
listen.
sugary icing.
You should listen to this. As trim healthy people living this lifestyle, we are not living a lifestyle of sugar, but there will be little amounts of sugar that are just in there, and I don't think we should feel fear, shame, any of these things,
I'm
and
going
live
home
in a
to have 85% chocolate.
live
with
in
a
a
little bit
state
of sugar in it.
of
Doesn't bother me.
paranoia. I don't. It could go extreme,
Oh yes.
and that's what I'm saying.
Could it? That's what I'm always wondering though. Why? Who's going extreme?
I want to
I've
say,
seen some people like
Can
this.
I just tell you something?
Like
I
point
want-
oh-
She used to be
000.
like that a
No,
little bit.
I want to say this. I think it's extreme how the world is living.
Yes.
It's dangerous. And I'm just trying to shake everybody and say, hey, let's get to the healthy, which is what you're
Yeah.
calling balanced.
Yeah.
I am not ashamed of my 85% chocolate.
No.
It has cane sugar in it. Organic cane sugar. Who cares? It's,
It's
not
like-
enough to do anything
It's like
to my
4
blood
grams for a full thing.
Yeah, it's not enough to do anything. I'm not afraid of my fresh fruit. I'm not afraid of my grains and my bread and my sweet potatoes. I'm all about carbohydrates. And I'm not afraid of honey and things like that. I don't believe you should abuse things like honey or dried fruit, but I have it every day. But I'm just saying, if Pearl wants to have a donut a couple times a year, I will sit by her and I'll even look at her with a smile.
She will.
I'm not imbalanced in that way, but I'm saying people these days are allowing their little children to have diabetic tires on their stomach. Is it okay, or is it abuse? Is it abuse to allow your children to grow up with addictions? We say, oh, don't vape, but you allow your children to be addicted to Skittles? Don't vape, but go and fill your pillowcase at Halloween and keep it in your room?
Real talk.
It is real, Serene, and I think that's how we should end, because I agree.
Oh, can I say one more thing?
It's your
The
podcast.
reason my vape's on my brain is when I work out, I listen to Spotify. My worship on Spotify.
Do you vape a little when you
I
work
thought
out?
you were listening to inspo songs.
Yes, but I'm now
Oh, you
to the zen of worship. I really
Okay.
I really like to just, it's my time with the Lord.
Are you
too.
zen? You zen with workout?
No, I like soft worship music now. I'm back
Oh,
over that
you
hump.
sprint with your inspo.
Yes,
yeah,
the
okay.
sprint.
Nice.
So I'm really, really enjoying that. And on Spotify, I don't pay for it, so I get the ads, and so I get this government against vaping ads. Like the real weight about vaping. So vape was on my brain. But guess what else comes? They say all this anti-vape, but then they have sugar ads that come up for Skittles, for the new flavor of Starburst things. Like anytime you listen
Taste
to
the rainbow.
Yeah, taste the rainbow. All of this kind of stuff. It's all sugar. So they have government paid ads against vaping. And then, I don't know, every second ad is a candy.
See you, everybody.
Cha 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 cha.